Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a solo hot tenting trip in the absolute pouring rain. So it just went through a thunder and lightning storm as I was hiking into the forest, and I am absolutely horrifically drenched in water right now. I've got the tent pitched, I've got the stove in there, but I do still need to get the stovepipe in there. My backpack rain cover luckily came in and saved the day today because I've got my down insulation inside of there, as well as my sleeping pad and a full change of clothing because I am soaked. Socks, boxer shorts, everything totally soaked. Now that's not a problem because I've got the hot tent and I'll be able to hang all of my clothing up top later on this evening and get them totally dry after I source some dry firewood. So I got to get this chimney pipe installed on top of the stove. And I think I'm going to get my sleeping gear inside of the mesh inner, but I'm not going to open anything out of the stuff sack. I'm just going to push it off to the side for now because I'm going to be in and out of the tent. Now, one thing is there is a big puddle situated in the entryway of the tent. It's not going underneath of my inner, and I've dug out a little trench to redirect the water. So that's going to be a messy part of the tent. On the other side, I've got my wax canvas ground sheet on the ground. So once I do kind of inch my way in the tent, I can be dry. I don't have to muck around in this mud. I can sit down on the other side, get in the mesh inner, and stay nice and dry. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me if I want to have a comfortable night tonight, especially getting all this stuff dry. So I'm going to get this chimney pipe installed and get all my gear kind of situated inside and go and get some firewood right away. All right, guys, I've got a really good score here. A nice long piece of dead hardwood. It's hollowed out in the center all the way up, so that'll be easy to split with my knife. And it's going to be a task getting all this cut. So I am totally drenched. I've got my sweater off right now because realistically, I can't get any wetter. So I might as well just get drenched all the way through, do the work with less weight on my body. And you guys know my take on rain gear. I don't like rain gear, having to pack it in and all that nonsense. I'm just gonna get wet. I'm gonna get soaked and I'm gonna be totally fine. I've got the stove, I've got proper insulation, I've got change of clothes. I'm not worried about getting cold. And this is not a survival video, this is a camping video. I'm not one of those silly survival or bushcraft channels. I'm a real guy who goes camping. That's all this is camping. So, I am going to be totally fine, as I always am, but this is going to take some work. I'm going to work up quite a bit of sweat doing this. So I got to get this cut down. Now I did bring a mini stove, so there's got to be small pieces. So it's a little bit more cutting, but it's going to burn a lot easier inside of that tent, meaning I'm not going to heat myself out too badly. So I'm going to have to control the burn, definitely, but this is good dense hardwood. Let's just get to work and get it cut. Alright guys, I've got pretty much all of my firewood cut and split. I do have a long section of the hardwood tree just on the other side of the fire pit. If I do want to pick away at that later on, I can do so. But it was really important for me to get the wood that I know I'm going to need for today and tonight inside of the tent right away. That gives me an opportunity now to kind of square up camp, get some sleeping gear sorted, and the inside of the tent straightened up. I am going to have to light a small fire in there rather early, and it is getting later in the afternoon right now, and it's getting colder, so I can actually feel a lot of the cold starting to set in where I am soaked. But as I mentioned earlier, I've got the wood stove secured, I've got hardwood, dry firewood secured, and I've got dry sleeping equipment all secured. So those are the three things that are checked off in the box of staying warm and staying happy as well. So I do want to be making up a coffee to get some internal kind of heat built back up in my body. So I want to go through my backpack on this side, get all my coffee stuff out, maybe be able to bring it out here if this rain holds off, and get all that stuff squared away, and then get a small fire going inside the stove, get some water boiled up, and then enjoy a hot drink, and hopefully the rain will hold off a little bit longer. Alright guys, so I'm taking shelter inside of the tent right now. It has just started raining. It's starting to taper off now though, but it was raining hard there for a few moments. So I brought all my coffee stuff inside. I've got my fresh ground coffee beans. I've got my coffee cup. I've got my pot on top of the stove as well. Now that does have to come to a full boil because it was water out of the lake. And I want to make sure that I don't get sick from anything. So we'll bring that to a full boil, but while I'm in here, I will mention it is absolutely roasting hot right now. My face is burning, like it is very, very hot. So to all those people out there that are curious, I should say, just wondering, is this stove big enough to heat a tent of this size? Now, I do have many video parts and series if you're interested in any of that, how to get started hot tenting, what stove to choose. I'll put those links to those videos down in the video description to this video, and you guys can navigate your way over there to find out a little bit more information if you're interested. But just to bring you guys up to speed right now in this video, it is 10 degrees outside right now. Inside, I just checked and it is 30 degrees Celsius with that door totally open inside at my chest level. 30 degrees Celsius. So up top, it's got to be pushing 40 degrees. It's very hot up there. So when I do hang my sweater up later on this evening, it's going to hang from the hook and it's going to hang on this pole basically. It's going to be dry, no problem by morning time, as well as my pants and my t-shirt and everything's getting hung up, and I'll be totally dry, fresh clothing tomorrow morning. Now, like I said, I do have a change of dry clothing still packed away inside of my backpack. And I've got all my sleeping gear behind me still in the stuff stack. I left it that way because I knew I'd be coming in and out all wet and I don't want to ruin any of my sleeping gear. So I'm going to let this come to a boil. If the rain does hold off, I'm just looking outside right now, it does seem to be holding off. So once that comes to a boil, I may be able to take it outside, pour some coffee, and enjoy some time out there because it is extremely hot in here right now. And I would like to get out. The last thing I want to do is sweat while being soaking wet. But honestly, my pants are starting to dry sitting this close right now. It's hard to believe that quick, but I'm actually starting to dry out. So I'm going to bring that to a boil and possibly bring it outside. The end result's going to be a hot cup of coffee and I'm going to enjoy it. So let's let that bring up to a boil and we'll take it from there. Alright guys, well I've got my hot cup of coffee on the go right now, and this is definitely a game changer. Having a hot liquid on a wet, cold day like this definitely helps. So, if you guys look at the tent, you'll notice, one, I did zip the door shut because I hung my sweater inside, and I loaded the wood stove full of wood, draft and damper wide open. So hopefully that'll dry some stuff out while I'm outside drinking my coffee. But if you look at the tent, over by the stove, the entire tent fabric's dry, and the backside is rapidly drying right now as we speak actually. So that should give you an idea of how much heat is building inside of there. That whole tent will be dry later on as long as the rain holds off. But the inside is roasting hot, absolutely cooking inside of there. So my sweater is hung up. Hopefully that'll dry out and I can use that tonight as a pillow. If not, I'm just gonna have to use some other balled up clothing inside of the stuff sack for a pillow. But these will be good candidates because they are soaking wet right now, and if they don't dry out, throw them in a stuff sack and use it as a pillow. I do have dry clothing in there calling my name, but I'm not going to give in until later on, until I'm in there for the night, and then I'll get changed out of all of this and be very, very comfortable. So I'm going to enjoy my coffee, staring across the lake right now. Got a mirror of the water, and the reflection is just insane. It is so colorful out there right now with the fall colors. It's beautiful. And inside of the forest right now, also it's beautiful. It's a nice cloudy day. All these colors are really popping. So I'm going to sit back for a few moments, enjoy my coffee, take a look at the scenery, and I'll catch up with you guys shortly. Alright guys, so it's been a few hours since coffee break, and I'm just coming inside of the tent right now, loading the wood stove back up full of wood because it did die out, but taking off pretty quick right now. I can see some flickering flames in there, so that'll come up the temp again. Looking at my sweater, so just to give you guys an idea, and this has been in here for 2 hours with the wood stove going, just to give you an idea of how wet I was, this is the sleeve to my sweater. Drenched, absolutely drenched. So I'm gonna have to take this hoodie out a little later on and really give it a good wring out to get all that water out of there. Now it's only been in there, like I said, a couple hours, so throughout the night when it's in there for 8-10 hours, this heat rising to the top, it will dry out a lot more than it is right now. But this is really nice and warm, really nice inside of here. So it is getting late in the day. It's gonna be dark probably within the next 2 hours. I've got to get my pot back down to the lake, clean out the coffee grounds, and get it back on the wood stove and boil up some water and start on supper. Alright guys, supper is all done and it was absolutely awesome. Really, really good. I'm glad I had that. It was nice and warm and nice and filling as well. It's getting late, so time really got away from me on this one. I had no idea what time it was because it's been so dark and gloomy all day that I just lost track of time. I've got about 30 minutes left of sunlight, or daylight I should say, so I've got to get my sleeping gear set up. So I brought a sleeping pad and a pump sack. I just got to inflate this, and then I've got my downfill top quilt pushed down in the foot end. I'm probably not going to be crawling inside of that for quite a while because once I get out of these wet clothes and the door gets shut on the tent, or even just down to here halfway zipped shut, it's going to be plenty warm inside of there. I'm not going to need that, I don't think. So I'm just going to be lounging on top of the sleeping pad until it's actually time to go to sleep. But I got to get this thing inflated. It's crazy how fast time flies by when you're really not paying attention to it, especially on a dark day. So get this inflated, and at least then I'll have something comfortable to lay on. Alright guys, I got my sleeping pad inflated and inside of the mesh inner portion. I've got my battery bank here and I brought my light bulb. Now you guys have seen this so many times and this thing goes with me everywhere now. I love it. So I'm going to be hanging this up top in the mesh inner, and that'll be my light for this evening, and then I'm going to run the cable down through the mesh inner just off to the side so it's not in my way. That'll be my lighting source, and everything else is looking pretty good. Now, one thing I do want to mention is I do not like setting up my sleeping gear with a hot tent setup when it's getting close to dark or in the dark. I don't recommend doing it at all because it's so easy to accidentally bump the wood stove with your sleeping pad or your sleeping bag. That's the main reason why I don't like doing it. So that's why it's kind of in a little bit of a rush. It's getting dark very quick, and sure, I have a flashlight and a headlamp, but anything can happen and bump into the wood stove, and then you're going to have a cold night's sleep because your air pad's got a big hole in it or your sleeping bag's melted. So now that that's taken care of, I'm going to leave my top quilt down inside the stuff sack. I'm definitely not going to need it, even just sitting right here next to the stove. That thing's pushing out some serious heat, and there's just coals right now. So I do have a couple of big chunky logs that I ended up cutting. These are going to be like the nighttime logs, so when I go to bed I'll load one of these in there. That's it. I'm not going to worry about loading any more wood. I'll go to sleep just like I do in the middle of winter time. So I'm going to be crawling in here, and it is starting to rain again, so it's probably good timing to just jump inside and get changed into some dry clothing and get a log in here, enjoy this, and start on movie night. So I'll bring you guys inside with me once I get changed and everything, and give you guys a little look inside and give you guys another update and go from there. Alright guys, well, I'm totally changed into some nice dry clothes. I even got my wool socks on, my base layers, my long sleeve, and I'm ready to settle in for this evening. So the wood stove is burning nice and low right now. It's going to be way too hot to crank that up this early, so I do have to hang my sweater back up though. That's one thing. I had to take it down just to kind of film this because it will be hanging right here on the pole. I've got the light hanging up top as well, so that's illuminating the tent very nicely. And all in all, this is going to be a great time. I can already tell I'm very comfortable, very. So check this out. If I lay down in here, I've got all kinds of room, and to roll over and reach the stove door, pop that open, load in a couple pieces of wood, no problem. So the beautiful thing about hot tenting is it doesn't have to be hot. You can have it mild, you can have it cool, a whole bunch of different temperature ranges, and I find a lot of people that are getting into the idea of hot tenting think that it's only reserved for winter time, for like negative temperatures, and that's simply not the truth. Right now it's about 8 degrees Celsius outside. The wood stove is working really well at cutting down all of the condensation and moisture because it is a wet, rainy day. It is totally dry inside of here. The tent walls are absolutely dry. It's a very nice climate inside of here, but as soon as I go outside, it's wet, it's damp, it's cold. So you don't have to burn the stoves cranked up all the way to max, and I highly recommend experimenting with your stove to find that comfort zone. But hot tenting, I could cook inside of here now. I don't have to bring a big bulky canister stove. I can use the wood stove to dry my clothing, my shoes. So I got my shoes positioned on some firewood just behind the wood stove, so those are going to dry out nicely, as well as hanging my sweater and my pants up top, which I'm going to do very shortly. So all in all, this is going to be definitely a very comfortable evening. I've got loads of room behind me with all kinds of pieces of gear. I got snacks back there. I do have my Topqulit, my big down Topqulit, so I'm actually going to be using this as a pillow right now, as I don't need it for warmth. And this is going to be me for the rest of the evening, guys. So just wanted to bring you inside the tent, show you the inside view. Very comfortable in here. So I'm going to say goodnight to you guys now. I'm going to watch a couple movies and then go off to bed, and I'll see you first thing in the morning. Good night, guys. Good morning, everybody. It is a beautiful sunny morning out here on the edge of the lake. We got crisp, cool fall leaves all over the place. It was just above frost last night, so it got much colder than I thought it was actually going to get. It rained for a little bit and then it stopped, and then the cold set in, and it set in fast. I had to stoke that stove up and get it nice and warm because there was a bit of condensation forming on the tent with all the moisture and fog rolling off of the lake. But cranking up that wood stove burned it all off, and it was nice and dry. And talking about dry, my sweater is totally dried out. So my pants are nice and dry, my shoes even are nice and dry, and my sweater. Everything totally dry from hanging it up in the tent last night and letting the wood stove do its thing. So I've been up for a little while now. I've already had breakfast. I've got coffee on the go right now. And it is definitely a beautiful morning out here. My morning alarm today was geese flying over top. And they kind of went in this direction, but they went in like 4 or 5 different groups. So it wasn't just one big group squawking away. It was one, and then 10 minutes later another group came by. So it was a steady stream of geese flying over. So that was pretty awesome. And then the sound of the crackling stove early this morning definitely made everything come together. So I'm working on a cup of coffee right now. I'm going to enjoy this with this beautiful morning, and then I'm going to let the stove cool down and eventually get that out and dump out the coals. So cheers guys, coffee time. Alright guys, everything is totally packed away inside of the backpack. It was a little bit of a task, but it all got in there. The biggest thing was letting the stove cool down, which only takes about 10 to 15 minutes realistically. So I did dump all the coals in the fire pit. That is totally snuffed out with lake water. I went down with my pot, dumped it in there. I took whatever firewood I had left over and I placed it on the back side of the fire pit, so whoever comes here next will have a head start, which is always nice, especially during hunting season. You roll in a camp, it's nice to have a bit of firewood already processed. So all in all, everything is packed away. I had a really great trip. If you guys have any questions or comments, drop it down in the comment section and I'll be sure to get back to you. But right now it's time to get the camera packed away and time to hit the trail. So peace out guys, and I'll see you in the next one.